8 years, that's how long Puerto Ricans have been waiting for Washington to deliver on a promise that was supposed to rebuild homes, restore schools, and bring back a sense of normalcy after one of the most devastating hurricanes in modern history. The reality, just 4 billion have actually made it to the island. 4 out of 27, that's not just a number, it's a betrayal. And the question isn't just where the money went, it's whether Puerto Rico will ever be treated as equal in a system that seems designed to forget them once the headlines fade. Think about that for a second. Families who lost everything in Hurricane Maria are still patching up roofs with blue tarps years later, while billions in recovery money sit tangled in bureaucracy.
I now recognize Mr. Hernandez for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, hi. I represent Puerto Rico in Congress, and although we may disagree as to how, I do agree that disaster response in this country needs to be reimagined and made more effective. And I sincerely look forward to and hope to be a constructive partner in that respect. Nearly 8 years after Hurricane Maria struck the island, we have around $27 billion that have been obligated for Puerto Rico, yet only $4.4 billion have been dispersed. In the interest of time, I appreciate brief answers because there's a lot of anxiety in the island as to the future of these funds. Can you assure the people of Puerto Rico that these obligated funds are safe, regardless of any FEMA restructuring?
That is the biggest concern that we have within FEMA right now is outstanding claims. And the worst thing the federal government can do is to say that there is a claim here, it's valid, that we are committed to fulfilling that responsibility.
I'm sorry, in the interest of time, could you say yes or no?
So those claims are something my team is going through right now and evaluating, and President Trump is committed.
I will assume
following
that the answer is no, and I'll proceed to the
have.
next question, and I hope that we can work to make sure that those funds get to the people. Is it your department's view that the Puerto Rico government has done everything in its power to expedite the reconstruction process?
Oh, I believe that Puerto Rico has been working hard to reconstruct and to put itself back together and partnering with the federal government as well.
So is the obstacle in the disbursements FEMA's fault?
The what?
Is the obstacle in these disbursements FEMA's responsibility?
I don't have the knowledge to know specifically where all the problems are with the response in Puerto Rico, although I do know that FEMA has not fulfilled the obligations it previously promised to the island.
I'm going to shift to immigration in the interest of time. So you served as governor of South Dakota. Would you advise governors to give public assurances that federal immigration enforcement will not take place in their state?
Would I advise to governors that they not?
That they give public assurances that immigration enforcement will not occur in their states?
No, I prefer that governors partner with us to make their states safer. I believe that the relationships that we have on the ground in many states is absolutely critical to making sure.
So the answer is no. You would not advise them to tell their constituents, no, there will not be any enforcement in this state. Would you have publicly told immigrants, as governor in your state, not to worry about deportations because your state wasn't a border state like Texas or California?
I felt as though my state was a border state because we were every day impacted by the drug trafficking and the human trafficking that was coming over the border and had put a foothold in the state of South Dakota. Every state was dramatically impacted.
Okay, so you would not have told immigrants in your state, don't worry about deportation. You would not have said that.
The laws need to apply equally to everybody. That's what is so discouraging about the previous administration is they picked winners and losers.
So that's the question has been answered. That's fine. You would not say that. You would tell your constituents immigration laws will be enforced in this state whether or not we are a border state like California or Texas.
Laws will be enforced, absolutely.
In January, the governor of Puerto Rico made an opposite claim. She told immigrants not to worry about deportations because we're not Texas or California. Days later, ICE conducted enforcement operations in immigrant neighborhoods in San Juan. Was that a responsible thing to say?
I didn't hear her say that and haven't heard this before, but I believe that the partnerships we have with governors is extremely powerful in keeping their communities safe.
That's a no answer. Was she aware, was she briefed by DHS about the immigrant raids that would happen in the ensuing days?
I have no knowledge to that situation. What I will tell you is that every governor that I know of feels the responsibility of protecting their state, and they should be making the best decisions to secure their communities and their families that live there.
And that includes telling people in their states or jurisdictions The administration's policy is that there will be raids to detain people who were undocumented in their jurisdictions, not to tell them, don't worry, this will not happen here.
I am not certain as to the situation you're speaking to. I'll get more information so that I can respond to you appropriately.
But
I'm not certain.
hypothetically,
I'm not
as
certain what
governor,
announcements
would you have told the people of your state the laws will be enforced here as in any other state?
What I would tell my people of South Dakota is that my job is to work for them and to represent them and to be their leader and protect their best interests. That includes making sure that citizens of South Dakota are my #1 priority every day.
I understand that, and I thank you for your time. And like I said at the beginning of my turn, I do look forward to working constructively on ways to reimagine FEMA and disaster response and to make sure that those funds, which today you have told us are not guaranteed for the people of Puerto Rico, are guaranteed and delivered on time. Thank you.
Gentleman's time is expired. I now recognize Mr. Luttrell for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, how are you?
Imagine being told over and over again help is on the way, only to watch your community crumble while waiting for checks that never arrive. That's the reality. Representative Pablo José Hernández forced into the spotlight when he confronted Secretary Kristi Noem during a tense congressional hearing. And what unfolded wasn't just about FEMA paperwork. It revealed a bigger truth about who gets prioritized in America and who gets left behind. The first blow landed when Hernández asked the simplest possible question: could Puerto Ricans be assured that the $27 billion obligated to them were safe no matter how FEMA restructured? A yes or no question. Straightforward. Yet Noem couldn't give a straight answer. She pivoted, hedged, and talked in circles about evaluating claims. The silence after his follow-up, "So I will assume the answer is no," spoke louder than any speech could. For Puerto Ricans, that hesitation wasn't just political theater. It was confirmation of their worst fears that once again promises would dissolve into excuses. This wasn't just about numbers on a balance sheet. It was about lives on the ground. Hurricane Maria struck in 2017, flattening neighborhoods, wiping out the power grid, and leaving families in darkness for months. Billions in federal aid were announced with great fanfare. Headlines shouted about the generosity of Congress. But fast forward nearly a decade, and the people on the island still haven't seen the majority of that money. To them, Noem's evasive answer wasn't a technicality. It was a slap in the face. The reason it matters is because Puerto Rico has lived this pattern before. Disasters strike. Federal leaders make lofty promises. Media coverage peaks for a few weeks. Then the story fades, leaving residents to pick up the pieces with whatever scraps of aid filter through. Compare that with the mainland. When hurricanes devastate Florida or Texas, billions flow almost immediately. Governors give daily press conferences. Federal agencies race to show their presence. But for Puerto Rico, silence, delays, and red tape. The island's American citizens are forced into a cruel waiting game, one that feels less like recovery and more like abandonment. Hernández didn't stop at pointing out FEMA's failures. He pressed further, asking whether the Puerto Rican government had done everything in its power to expedite reconstruction. Noem responded with vague praise about working hard, but when pressed on whether the bottleneck was FEMA's fault, she dodged again. She admitted FEMA hadn't fulfilled its obligations, but she stopped short of taking responsibility. That gap, the refusal to own up to the reality, is exactly why trust has eroded between Puerto Rico and Washington. And then the exchange took a sharp turn. From disaster aid to immigration, Hernández shifted gears to a question of moral leadership. Would Noem as governor ever reassure immigrants in her state that they wouldn't face deportation? It wasn't hypothetical. Puerto Rico's own governor had recently told immigrants not to worry about deportations since the territory wasn't a border state like Texas or California. Days later, ICE conducted raids in San Juan, leaving immigrant communities terrified and betrayed. When Hernández put this scenario to Noem, her answer was as rigid as it was revealing. No, she said. She would not give such assurances. In fact, she argued that every state, including her own South Dakota, was essentially a border state because of drug and human trafficking. The geography didn't matter. The framing wasn't about safety or dignity for families. It was about enforcement, about viewing immigrants primarily as risks to be managed, not as neighbors to be protected. That answer matters because it exposes a deeper philosophy of governance. For Hernández, leadership meant fighting to ensure people's rights and dignity were respected, even when the system resisted. For Noem, leadership was reduced to a matter of enforcing laws, no matter how unevenly or unfairly those laws played out in practice. Equality, in her view, meant everyone faces the same enforcement. But in reality, true equality demands recognizing when the system itself is stacked against certain groups, when deportation raids target immigrant communities disproportionately, when aid to Puerto Rico is delayed while Florida receives its funding overnight. Simply saying laws apply equally becomes a cover for inequality. By calmly but firmly saying, "I will assume the answer is no," Hernández did something rare in Washington. He cut through the polished platitudes to reveal the truth behind them. He refused to let the moment pass as just another hearing filled with evasive language. Instead, he exposed the contradiction: how America can claim unity while treating its citizens so differently depending on where they live or what they look like. That quiet persistence was an act of resistance. It also underscored how hearings like these aren't just about accountability in the abstract. They're about real human lives. Puerto Ricans waiting years for roof repairs. Immigrant families afraid to leave their homes after raids. These aren't talking points. They're the human consequences of political decisions. And when leaders refuse to answer plainly, it signals that those consequences are acceptable costs in the machinery of government. The bigger picture is even more damning. What this hearing revealed is America's selective empathy. When mainland states face disaster, empathy is loud, urgent, and televised. When Puerto Rico suffers, empathy becomes a whisper drowned out by excuses. When politicians talk about laws applying equally, it sounds principled, but it conveniently ignores the unequal weight those laws carry for different communities. Equality on paper, inequality in practice. And that's why Hernández's questioning struck such a nerve. He wasn't just highlighting FEMA's delays, he was pointing to a national blind spot: the people who live in the margins of America's attention. Puerto Rico is home to millions of American citizens, yet their voices often go unheard in Congress. Immigrants are essential to the economy and communities, yet their humanity is often overshadowed by political battles. Both groups suffer from the same disease, a federal system that responds to them slowly, inconsistently, and often with indifference. By the end of the exchange, the contrast couldn't have been sharper. Hernández represented persistence, clarity, and moral conviction. Noem represented evasion, rigidity, and platitudes. One side forced uncomfortable truths into the open, the other side sidestepped them. And in that contrast lies the real lesson: leadership isn't about repeating talking points, it's about the courage to face hard realities, and the humility to serve all people equally, not just the politically convenient ones. But here's the danger: exchanges like these tend to fade quickly from the headlines. By next week, the news cycle will have moved on, yet the issues at the core, delayed disaster relief, selective enforcement, systemic neglect, remain unresolved. Puerto Rican families are still waiting, immigrant communities are still anxious, and unless the public keeps paying attention, the silence will continue. So where does that leave us? With a choice: do we let this moment slip into obscurity, or do we remember it as a reminder of what accountability should look like? Do we accept vague assurances and bureaucratic dodges, or do we demand straight answers and real action? Hernández showed that one determined voice can cut through the noise and expose the truth. But it's not enough for him alone to carry that fight. It's up to all of us to keep the pressure on, to make sure that Puerto Rico is not forgotten, and that immigrant families aren't reduced to statistics in political debates. Because justice delayed is justice denied. And when billions in promised aid remain locked in red tape while families struggle, when leaders talk about equality but practice selective empathy, the very integrity of American democracy is at stake. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who need to see what's really happening behind the headlines. We go beyond the surface to reveal the human impact of policy, because real understanding isn't just about knowing the facts, it's about empathy, about standing with those left in the margins, and about refusing to let silence cover injustice. Stay tuned, because we're just getting started.